Hello, and welcome everybody to another Monkey Mind Relaxation radio show with your host today, Cuddy Cudworth. How is everybody? If you are live, if you are listening into the comments, write us a comment. You are more than welcome to ask us any questions. Let me just turn it over there. It is a beautiful Thursday day. I am obviously always very positive about the days, and I always try and look for the positives, even when there's nothing around us to support us being positive. And I'm very much a big believer in if you keep watching the news, there is nothing in your life that is going to be happy or positive. So turn off the news, get onto those positive podcasts, get onto those positive people that you know, and start learning and enriching your life and getting you moving forward. Welcome, everybody. Oh, Veronica. Oh, we've missed you. Oh, Veronica, what an absolute pleasure. Welcome back to the show, Veronica. All the way just over the water there. Great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got two fabulous guests coming on shortly, but we are going to talk about a few things. Identity. The identity that we have and we create is really, really important. And people is very, very much misunderstood about the things that we say and how our monkey mind plays on the conversations that we have. And I always have to remind everybody, when it comes to our identity, there's a trifecta of identity. There is your core values, there's your identity, and there's also your beliefs. It's the trifecta of what makes us up and can cause those emotional instabilities that we have in our life, those emotional disturbances that we now talk about as mental health, as depression and anxiety. And if we're not aligned on that trifecta of our identity, the beliefs that we have, and also the core values, you can start maybe having that worry and those things. However, we're going to talk today for the next 5 minutes about identity. Identity and how important it is. That self-talk that we have towards that identity, and also what the things we say we become. And that's a powerful thing to say, that the things we say we become. Because your brain and your mind knows no difference. If you give it a command of saying, I'm stupid, that's a label. That becomes part of your identity. Now, if you keep repeating, I'm stupid, or you're maybe in a relationship, and somebody in your relationship or in your family might say, do you know what, you're quite stupid. And I'm using the term stupid as a label. You will start believing that becomes part of your identity. Now, and the reason I'm going to say stupid is because that's a word that I used to call myself an awful lot. Used to. And I'll use that word, used to. So if you're going to keep repeating something, you start believing what we're repeating. Now, it's so easy for absolutely everybody to start saying, I'm stupid, I'm useless, I'm not going to win, I'm going to be a failure. And I'm using those words because that's exactly how I used to identify. Even though we identify that just by those internal thoughts and conversations that we have, we start believing. Our monkey mind grabs hold to that and think, oh, that's our alter ego, that's who we are. And it's so easy to do it in a negative way. And a lot of the people I've been working with recently struggle to start recognizing their identity in a positive affirmation way, in an affirmation of the positive. So if you start saying, I am stronger than my challenge, if you start saying, I am more capable than I would like to believe, you're going to start becoming that. Those conversations that we have with our thoughts, and I'm a big believer of change your thoughts, change your life. So much so, I'm going to be touching on that very, very shortly. There is so much that you can start saying, and it's that simple change in talk and identity. So most people's identity, especially who I've been working with recently, other clients I've been working with recently, their identity is actually not from their own identity in any way. Imagine that. A lot of the times it can come from our parents. Our parents have said, oh, just to let you know, you're going to be like this because your dad was like this or your grandma was like this. That then becomes part of your identity. Oh, well, I'm not going to be able to do this because my These are not real Identities, these are the beliefs and the structures that we start creating to stop us progressing forward and being who we could be and who we want to be. Because those beliefs and those labels becomes part of our identity. So what can you do to start changing your identity? Right here, right now, what could you actually do? It's all right sitting listening to a radio show and saying, Cuddy, you don't know what I've gone through. I am wholeheartedly fully aware of how me sitting here on this fabulous radio station that we have, Men's Radio Station, what crops up for a lot of people is you don't understand where I've been. I actually do not understand. You are 100%, but I do understand the power of how we can start changing the things. Thank you very much, Sina, for letting me the message know. Alan will be back in. I might have to send him a text message. One of our guests has disappeared, but we'll be coming back shortly. Our first guest is going to be coming up very shortly, but let's keep talking about the identity. The identity that we form becomes part of our blueprint. It becomes part of who we are. So if I was to ask you a question right now and fill in blankety blank, let's go old school on this. If you were to fill in and say, I am 3 times, give yourself a label, what you think you are. Even write it in the comments if you want. I am a, or I am. Just write off 3 comments about yourself. If you are going to be writing down, I'm going to give you some time for that. I should have a little timer or a clock on this, like countdown. Dun, 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 dun. And if you're not writing it down on a piece of paper, just start actually realizing and becoming so self-aware of how you identify. And if you were to say, I am a, what would be the blank word that you would put on there? Now, a long, long, long time ago, my blank word would have been, I am a loser. I am a failure. I am a terrible human being. That was, I love that, Veronica. Well done for taking part. I am determined. Love that. Powerful word, Veronica. Powerful, positive word. Determined. Love that. However, for a lot of other people, and when I do these exercises with people, I say, well, I am a, the terms that we create are what we start identifying with. So if you were to say, oh, I am an anxious person, imagine, or if you were to say, I am a worrier. Now, believe it or not, worry is a behavior. That's not who you are. But if you were to say, I am a, let's put in the word worrier, that becomes part of your identity. Now, if you were to subconsciously think, well, I am a worrier, and you repeat that 3 times a day, guess what you're going to start believing? You're creating a belief system within yourself to start becoming a worrier. Repeat that 3 times a day for 2 months, 6 months, a year. That becomes set in stone, part of your identity. You take ownership of that. Can you imagine how you're going to be if you are a worrier? You will have worry thoughts. You will have worrisome nights. You will lose sleep. You will start becoming more anxious. This is all part of the power, and I repeat that again, the power of your identity. Now, for anyone that's listening and you're thinking, oh, wow, that's actually a little bit mind-blowing. It should be. Because instead of saying, and I use this on a daily basis because I'm fully aware of the linguistics and the language that we use creates emotional states within ourselves, such as anxiety, depression, worry, those intrusive thoughts that I help so many people with. Then it becomes part of your identity, and we don't want it to become part of your identity. So you can start creating an actual identity you want to become. So instead of saying, I am now a worrisome person, like Veronica's just slammed down, I am determined. Now, if you're one word for saying I am a determined person, imagine how you're going to start being. Just from the linguistics that you've used, and Veronica's nailed it. I'm guessing Veronica's a determined person, so she's going to get up. She's going to know, well, today could be a tough day, but I am determined to get through it. How will that change the emotional state that you're creating on a daily basis just by working on your identity. That's it. Nothing else, just by working on one part of the trifecta. And look, I know it goes deeper than this. I even hear people talking, oh, well, I'm a kind of person because my mum's told me that for a long time. I've heard our grandparents talk to their grandkids and say, oh, don't worry about it. You might always be chunky because, well, your granddad was chunky and you're just like your granddad. That starts becoming part of your identity. You repeat that, and grandmas and granddads, you know you're always only ever going to try and do the best. Veronica, I am a worrier, but I've had to be more determined to accept that I cannot change. Oh, I love that, Veronica. I'm a worrier, but I've had to be more determined to accept that I cannot change the things that my worry. Right. Let's go down that rabbit hole. Absolutely. Your worry doesn't change what is going to happen. It just makes the situation worse. And how many times does your worry change the outcome? Ask yourself. A lot of people out there listening right now, not just Veronica in the comments. If anybody else wants to comment, you are more than welcome to. But if that becomes part of your identity and I'm a worrier, worry doesn't change the outcome. The outcome still might happen. 9 times out of 10, it won't happen. That's the thing. You have all this worry about a certain circumstance going to happen. Then you get to that certain circumstance. Well, nothing that I actually thought was going to happen happened. But that's part of identity. And we can kick ourselves when we're down. We can start getting upset and thinking, oh, I wish I just had so much more chances and opportunities and things like that. Now we do. We actually do have more chances and more opportunities. It's just about understanding the power of identity and repetition. If you're repeating something in a negative state, you're going to start creating negative habits, negative behaviors. If you start recreating something in a habitual way, in a positive way, and I have always said this, negativity is easier than being positive because it becomes part of our identity. Well, I'm just quite a negative person, so I don't have to try. Being positive is not easy, and it is a challenge. It really is. Sina, just let me know if Alan's back in. Cheers, Sina. Thank you so much. So it does become. So this was just a tip of the iceberg, just touching on identity and how you can change your identity by understanding how you can change your thoughts. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sina. And that's Veronica. Is there anything else you want to share? You're more than welcome to, because we are going to start bringing in our guests. We've got 2 amazing guests today. Actually, I will say friends of mine that we did some training on. I said, look, you know what? You've got so much education in your fields and you've got so much experience. You have to come and share that experience with us on the radio show. So we've got 2 fascinating guests from all over the UK. I will give them a little quick rundown of the first of one of our guests, Rachel Goth, which I think is a fascinating name. I love the Rachel Goth. And Rachel, we are going to bring you into the show. We're going to go right live. Sina's going to bring you into the show, and we're going to do a full-on introduction for Rachel into the show. So welcome, Rachel, everybody, to the show.
Hi, Cuddy. Hi, everyone.
Oh, by the way, it sounds so good in the earphones. Have you got a really good microphone on, Rachel?
I'm just on the Mac, just on the regular computer.
Just on the Mac. That's all it is. Absolutely fantastic. Rachel, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for inviting me. It's good
Not a problem at all. We love having our little guests on the Monkey Mind Relaxation Show. For a lot of our listeners, they know that we do 2 radio shows with Graham. We've got another radio show, but this is the one where I try and get some experts in to come and talk about their chosen fields. And you've got a fascinating look. A very recent buzzword is mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, Rachel, explain to us what you do, where you're from, and how you help.
Well, I'm Rachel. My name's Goth. You mentioned you were fascinated by that. I recently found out that was actually from a spelling mistake in the 1700s. I had an ancestor that was asked to write his name down and didn't know how to spell it. Someone else misheard him, and we ended up with Goth.
So, if you don't mind me asking, what was it supposed to be? What was the original?
I think the original one was like Git or something like that.
Would you rather be a goth or a git?
So I'm happier as a goth.
I love it when you go down the rabbit hole, checking out the histories and things like that. Oh, could you imagine Rachel Gate? What a terrible! Oh, that's brilliant. I love that story. So, Rachel, you are a mindset and success coach. Is that correct?
But mindset for artists and makers, really about helping them turn their hobby into a business by helping them become more confident in their work and taking the steps, taking the actions in their business.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Now, you are also a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, I bring in coaching, hypnotherapy, mindfulness, all kinds of different tools that I've learned along the way. So it's a real combination.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And why is mindset such an important buzzword these days?
I think we're starting to realize the importance of it, because previously it was kind of a, years ago, it's just sort of pull yourself together, get on with it, do it kind of thing. But there's lots of people who've been stuck and my thing is lots of bright people, lots of really talented people, lots of passionate people that, doing work and jobs that, they're not really interested in because they don't have the mindset, they don't have the confidence to think that they could do these things that they really want to do. It's like my own dad. I found out after he died that he was actually a really, really good at art. He'd been really good at photography, really good at art. I was like the youngest child, like with a big age gap. So by the time I'd come along, he'd given it all up. So I never even got to see a picture that he drew. But he spent his whole career working in factories because it wasn't something he thought he could pursue. It wasn't, something for someone like him, from a working class background. And he just didn't have that faith in himself to use all these, talents that he had, all these passions. So they dwindled away.
Yeah, and you mentioned faith in oneself, and that's such a big thing these days. And why is it people don't have that faith and confidence in themselves to be able to move forward? Where does that come from, Rachel?
I think it's a combination because sometimes it's you can see it in patterns in a family, like it's passed down in the way people, they don't mean to, obviously, because it's come from generations before them, but they just get that impression that they're lesser than other people, that things aren't for the likes of them. And it's just something, it's the drip drip, when you're getting that message over and over again. And on the other hand, sometimes it's just something that happens. Maybe something happens when you're a child that your mind that's not fully formed yet interprets in a certain way, and you take away rules and messages from that, thinking, oh, I'm not, I'm no good. Or if I stand up on stage, if I put myself out there, I'm going to be ridiculed, because that's what happened, when you were 4 or 5 or something like that. We pick up all these rules and these ideas about life that aren't, necessarily true. And we live by them, constraining ourselves and keeping ourselves small, really.
Yes. And that comes down to those key decisions that we make in life.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people are I wasn't. And I know when I got into key decisions in life and I'm like, oh, wow. It's kind of like the key into the little into the little keyhole. You just unlock it and the mind just goes, I did not expect that. Because our mind is there to keep you safe, isn't it? The whole premise of the subconscious mind is, and the monkey mind, I'll always talk about the monkey mind, saying we're looking for our fears to keep us safe where we are. So how do we break free of those key decisions that we've made in life, Rachel?
I think awareness is the first thing, because as you say, your mind, often it doesn't really care if you're happy or you're not happy.
Yeah.
It wants you to be safe. So it will keep you in your comfort zone.
Yep.
Keep you doing what you always did, because that's what's kept you alive so far. And anything new is potentially scary, and who knows what could happen.
Yeah.
And as you say, we don't know that we're operating through these rules, but you can often on some level you know about these events and things that have happened, but
Yeah.
they're not there on the surface level. Because when I work with people with hypnotherapy, for instance, I had a lady who she couldn't speak up in meetings or give talks, that kind of thing. She'd just, have palpitations and the complete sense of dread, her whole body, she just couldn't do it. And it went back to a time at school where she'd had to give a talk in assembly and she hadn't prepared for it at all, because she was a child.
Yeah.
So she hadn't prepared for it. And then she was up there on stage and she was completely embarrassed in front of her friends and the whole school. And she'd made that decision, her brain had made that decision. Well, that was unpleasant. We are never doing that again.
I love that. That's absolutely fantastic. So I always remembered. I know I did mention that everybody has trauma, depending on the meaning that we give. Your brain it's got a negative bias. It doesn't want pain. It will do anything to avoid pain. So if it remembers, and that's the whole premise of the subconscious, and I always try and explain it as that's the cloud. All your memories get pushed into the cloud. And then at certain points you think, I know I've got a memory here. So, there we go. Stay away from that one. That hurts. For instance, if you put your hand in the fire, you're going to, right, I remember that. Don't put my hand in the fire. That's the whole premise of the subconscious. Remember everything that's caused you pain, that could have killed you. However, when we have those lesser instances in our life that a lot of people say, well, that's not trauma. What I've had in my life is trauma. However, the meaning we've given to those instances are what create those blocks. Is that right, Rachel?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's the rules you take away from it and what you've learned. Like, she'd learned, if I stand up and say something, people are going to ridicule me. And, she's taken that away from that. And the thing is, she was a child at the time. So life's a bit more, simplistic. And you don't know about the nuances. She wasn't really thinking, well, I hadn't prepared, which was part of it. And now she does prepare because she's an adult and this is work. It's a completely different situation. So you can go back and reprocess that memory as well and take the emotional sting out of it and put it back in the past, where it should be. So it's not influencing her today, so she can make conscious decisions.
Absolutely. Bringing that subconscious to the conscious, then your conscious mind makes better decisions for you. That's a phenomenal thing. So for any of our listeners right now, Rachel, what would you give them if there was anything that you could give them, say, look, this could change your life? What would it be, Rachel?
I have a little favorite exercise that I personally like, because it's great to use before, if you think you might be going into a stressful situation, you're winding yourself up, something like that. And it's peripheral vision. Because when we get anxious, we tend to sort of tunnel vision. We just hone in on the potential threat. So when you take a few minutes to just focus on a spot in front of you and then start to widen out your vision to the sides and just keeping your eyes on that spot, so that starts to get a little bit fuzzy as you just widen your view out all the way round, and you'll be surprised how far round you can see, all the way to the left and the right, and it'll look quite fuzzy in the middle. And on the edges of that vision, you're more likely to see movement clearer than still things. But it takes your mind into that parasympathetic, nervous system, into that state, because it's like the vision, that animals use that can see quite wider around.
So that would create a less fearful state in people. If you're looking here at the fear, you're struggling to see that actually around here there's no fear, and around here there's no fear. And if you focus on that, then you will have less fear about that little thing just poking you in the front right there.
Yeah, and biologically, it's switching you out of fight or flight, because fight or flight is, this thing's dangerous, let's concentrate on it. But when you're broadening out your view, your mind's like, well, it can't be that threatening if we're looking round here and round there. We're not giving it all our attention. So it's kind of like where you put your focus, your thoughts,
brilliant,
follow there.
And how does the I'm probably going to say this wrong, but the parasympathetic nervous system, how does that play such an important part in people's life and anxiety?
Because when you're in the opposite to that sympathetic nervous system is triggered, that's fight or flight. That's when we get the, you know, the anxiety and the panic and really all those feelings feel wrong at the time, you know, sweaty and palpitations, because your body's getting ready to run or fight. And that's completely inappropriate. You know, if you're stood in the supermarket or if you're in a meeting at work, it's just wrong. You know, if you're running and you feel sweaty and your heart's going, it feels completely natural, but it feels wrong in those other situations. And by doing these little exercises that remind your body and your mind that you are safe, then it clicks you out for that fight or flight response into the parasympathetic nervous system takes over.
And that's about creating a better choice for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, there's loads of little exercises that you can choose. You know, you can choose to do to switch. You know, to switch your state.
Absolutely fantastic. Give us, do you know, I was really drawn into that one, Rachel. I really like that one. So give us one more. What's another exercise that we can do?
Another exercise. I'm trying to think. What's being mindfulness exercises are really great. A little one that I gave to a client, which it seems really silly because it's so small and simple. When you go out for a walk, look for the color green. And it brings you into the moment, because sometimes we can go for a walk with our feet, but our mind's still, you know, somewhere else. But when you go out, look for the color green. And she did this exercise and she came back and she was like, wow. She was like, I saw so many different shades of green. I saw so many things that were green. I noticed so many things I'd never noticed before that I keep walking past every day. And it just really grounds you in the moment. And when you're in the moment, you're not ruminating on the past. You're not worrying about the future. You're here in the now.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm a big believer in that. That was one of the biggest takeaways I took from Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, is that people's depression is from the past, or you're looking into the future, which is causing you anxiety, where when you're lost and not in the moment. Wow. The second you said, start looking for something green, I just was like, well, she's got pillars. She's got pillars that are green behind her. I love that. So that's mindfulness, because I used to do lectures an awful lot a long time ago on cruise ships and stuff like that. And one of the most questions I had is, what's the difference between meditation and mindfulness? And I said, meditation is about going in and not reacting to the thoughts. And I think I always find mindfulness about being completely aware of everything and not reacting to it. It's like really focusing on one thing. And that's, so what would be your definition of mindfulness? Because it sounds like you're probably more up on mindfulness than myself.
Well, I think mindfulness, visualization, and hypnosis cross over a lot, because they're all states where you go into an internal, like you say, into an internal focus. And I've had it put as, it's more about the intention is the difference between like mindfulness and meditation and hypnosis. Because hypnosis, there's usually an issue that you want to solve, and you're going into to do something. You're using that state to actually do something, because hypnosis in itself is just a state of inner focus, the same as meditation.
Yeah.
And meditation perhaps is a more mindful in a way, as in you're not going in to do something right now. It's a longer term process of just being with yourself, focusing inside. And you can still address issues, but it's not like, it's more like, I think hypnosis is more like a short intervention, where meditation is kind of a way of life kind of thing. You know, it's a practice that you do every day, taking yourself into that inner state. And it doesn't have to be for very long, because I think what puts people off meditation, they think, oh, an hour, I've got to sit there for an hour and not think about anything. And so my brother-in-law went to a meditation class, And he actually sat there the whole time, digging his fingers into his legs to stop himself falling asleep. And I always say to people, if you fall asleep, don't worry about it, because it means you need some sleep.
Yes, I did. I remember, because when I used to meditate, I used to always fall asleep towards the end. And I read another book and it's like, no, sleep. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. That must be something that you need. And it's nice to be in that calm state to get you into that state, the better emotional state that you need to be in. So absolutely, you enjoy that little 5-minute nap at the end of meditation.
And you can meditate in 10 minutes as well. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be an hour.
It's true. I've never meditated for an hour. I think the longest I did was 40 minutes, but now I do a 10 minutes practice. A 10-minute practice. I have the metta meditation that I do. Actually, I do the metta meditation live in the Facebook group that I have. And everyone that turns up to that is like, it's one of the calmest ways of meditating. It takes you to such a deeper level of relaxation. It's a phenomenal thing. So, Rachel, is there anything else you want to share with our lovely listeners today?
3 things, actually, just 3 things about mindset if you are starting your own business.
Yep.
That I feel are key things. Relaxation. I feel relaxation is underrated. When you relax, you're not stressed. You're not in fear. You're not wasting time, because we waste time, so much time and energy when we're stressed, and we get brain fog. So when you relax, you get clarity of thought. So relaxation, it might feel like an indulgence, but it's so not. And learning to let go of setbacks and negative feedback. Journal on it, meditate, mindfulness, whatever helps you, because you don't want to take that baggage forward with you and have it become, anxieties and stresses on you.
Yeah.
And stay connected to your joy, your passion, and your why. Because why did you start this business? There must be a reason why. And if you don't know, journal on it and find out, and keep connected to that joy and that passion. Yeah. And that might be visualizing, the joyful times you've had. It might be visualizing the future, giving yourself a blueprint to work towards. But keep that in mind and write down everything positive. Keep a journal of that, every positive bit of feedback, everything that went well. And, if something negative happens, get that out and go through it and remind yourself why you're doing this and of all the good stuff, because there's always more good stuff than bad stuff, but we just forget about it.
Yeah. We always have that tendency to focus on the negatives instead of the positives.
We do.
I mentioned that a lot to Matt. I said, if you don't remember the time you enjoyed ice cream, because it didn't create any pain, so you don't have to remember the time you enjoyed your ice cream. You have to visually recall, do you remember that time we had ice cream? Because that was a really nice day, and we'll do that again.
Yeah, you have to make the effort to, stay in the passion and the joy of it.
Absolutely. Rachel, thank you so much for dropping by.
It's been lovely. Thanks, Goody.
Not a problem at all. Is there any questions from any of our listeners out there? The thousands and thousands of people that are tuning in live right now. It's probably 3. But Veronica, do you have any questions for our lovely mindset, happiness and success coach, the lovely Rachel Goth? Or I now want to call her Rachel Gibbs, if I'm honest with you. Absolutely fantastic. Rachel, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
For me too. Thanks very much for having me.
Not a problem at all. How does anybody listening get in contact with you, Rachel?
You can find me on my website, rachelgoth.com, or you can also find me on TikTok as rachgoth.com, rachgoth.com.
She's a TikToker. She's a TikToker. I have to do something on TikTok. I have to start.
I think you like it on there.
Oh, absolutely irks me. But yes, no, 100%. Right. Thank you so much, Rachel. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Sina. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to the lovely Rachel Goth, who is on TikTok. I am going to have to go to TikTok. I know I am. I don't know why. I don't get lost in TikTok like a lot of people. I've got family and friends that are always sending me TikToks. See, watch this. And I stay away from TikTok because I'm like, no, I want to be productive. I want to be productive and creative. But there is just sometimes that those things pop up and I'm like, Oh, I need to see more of that. So I do try and stay away from TikTok, which is a great format if you see the right things. Right. So moving on to our next guest, and John, honestly, I don't think we're going to have enough time to deep dive everything that our next guest does, because it is absolutely mind blowing what this gentleman does. But we're going to try and get as much information out of it as possible. So let's welcome to the show Allan Gibbs, everybody. Give it up for Allan Gibbs. There he is. Allan, I think you're muted. You're muted, Allan. You're muted. You've got to turn your mute off, Allan. I think you've muted yourself. There it is. How are you, Allan?
Comes to a radio station and mutes himself.
But
great, I'm fine, thanks, Cuddy.
You have a radio voice. Every time I hear you, I don't know if it's your earphones and your microphone, but I'm like, that is a radio voice.
Is that right? Really? That's very nice of you. I wanted to say thank you very much for this generously gifted opportunity. It's really, really lovely of you.
Not a problem at all, Allan. Look, I've been working with you in another genre as we elevate and we learn and move forward and grow in the roles that we have. And I always enjoyed listening to you because I know you've got a story and I know you've got a past. And I know that you're going to bring so much experience to any client that works with you. I 100% know that. Allan, can you please read out your business card to everyone that's listening? Because I know I don't think 30 minutes is going to be long enough. No, you read it. They're not going to be able to read it. You read the business card because it's a phenomenal thing what you do.
Okay, so I'm personal consultant is my title now, and what I'm doing is I'm integrating coaching and counselling together so that I don't separate out somebody coming to me with an agreement only for counselling or only for coaching. What I'm trying to do is meet the needs of the person that is addressing me for whatever they've got going on, and trying to work out whether what we need is a coaching approach or a counselling approach, and trying to respond to that. And it might mean that actually in each session, we actually acknowledge that maybe we've gone as far with that topic and we move on to the next, and where does that take us and how are we approaching it? So it just gives us a kind of a sense of, some opportunities and
Read out the other words on your card, because you've not actually told us, but it was your coaching, counselling, it was the title.
Okay, so integrative coach counsellor.
Right.
Personal consultant.
And you work with inner child, and you work on the father-son relationship, which I was like, boom, that is right there. Good afternoon, gents, from David Green. Welcome to the show, Mr. Green. Veronica said, no tiki-tok, it's a bad vibe. I'm not going to disagree with you on that, Veronica, but I know that tiki-toki is going tiki-toki. Gosh, I'm so old when I say that, Allan. However, let's talk the connection for inner child. I'm fascinated by inner child. It's definitely a genre I'm going to go and explore, but you are the expert on connecting to the inner child, Allan. Can you please explain that to me?
Well, that's very flattering of you. I'm not going to claim to be an expert, and my expertise, if it developed at all, really just goes back in my career history. But I want to talk about the present and the future rather than the past. What I'm bringing, I think, is rather like your previous guest, who works in a number of genres. We recognise that we're working with the conscious, with things that have become subconscious, with choices. Some choices that we didn't notice that we've made at some level, and they are affecting our present day actions, behaviors, attitudes, and our availability and beliefs about limits around ourselves, and indeed possibilities in relationships, in skills and expression of ourselves. So some of that crossing boundaries around the topics that you've mentioned and I raised a bit are that I've worked with boys and with men where their vulnerabilities in the past, in their relationship, and of course lots of father and son relationships are at risk from misunderstandings, fraught exchanges, separations that don't get repaired, or that get repair opportunities that don't get taken. So lots of things happen which mean that in our earlier lives, there were gaps or lacks or maybe intrusive experiences that we haven't recognized the influence of. Now, what I love about the coaching approach is it says we need to put this together in sentences that we can ask ourselves and talk about and think about. And as Rachel was saying, we can journal things as well. We can write and discover things for ourselves. What I'm saying about my approach to the inner child work is that I would bring an approach that links up with partly what you were talking about, the inner mind and our emotions, our bodies, our feelings, and our past, and potentially our imaginative and creative subconscious.
Yeah.
So instead of doing an exercise with maybe a young person, say maybe an older teenager who has clearly got some difficulties, and what we alight upon is that they did not have a great time with their dad, and we do a no blaming approach. We're not like saying people failed, let you down. We're completely avoiding anything to do with that. We're just saying this was history, this is the way it was, and there's no shame or blame applied at all. But it may be that what we need to try and help you think about is a way of discovering how that now links in with who you feel you are, who you think you are, and what event horizons and possibilities you have in your life. And if in any way it's affecting any of those, we have ways of approaching this. And they might just be talking and questions, but it might be best to use some of the things that you and Rachel were touching upon, which is to say, if you're comfortable, if you're feeling safe, if you're feeling secure, and you can be uninterrupted for maybe 20 minutes, maybe what we need to do is allow you to experience the possibility of revisiting yourself as an earlier, younger self in a way which allows you to meet up, to have a possible exchange. Might be a conversation, might be an exchange of messages or gifts, and it might come across as a bit more nurturing and a bit more caring and a bit more supportive.
Wow. Well said, Allan. Very good use of words there. So, I'm versed in victim mindset, as many people are. When you have a teenager, let's say anywhere between 18 to into the early 20s, and they're still struggling to make connections with family, and it comes from that blaming others, how do you work and go around making those connections, Allan?
Okay, so as you say, young adults, sort of 19 to 24, 25. I mean, I think there are some of the developmental psychologists who now say adolescence runs between about 14 years of age to 24 years of age, because we're dealing with the same things of identity, of finding a place in the world, of making relationships, of establishing ourselves, and of testing out ourselves as well to find out what we can do, what we're not so good at, what we want to try, what we want to explore. So yeah, I agree with you. It's an area of potential turmoil and potential transition again. Whereas other people would say, well, that's adulthood, so they're adults, so legally, everything's sorted, everything's fine, isn't it? No, it's not, as we well know, for those of us who've come through it and those still in it. Of course, if you're dealing with stuff that's about feeling that either you yourself think of yourself as having lost, missed out, had things taken away from you, missed opportunities, or that you feel your life was intruded into by somebody else's difficulties or problems, or whatever, then putting yourself in that relatively powerless and potentially blaming situation, just as you will know from what you've just said, keeps the dynamics absolutely pinning you down to not be able to move and change. And it is so important that you're able to feel good about yourself, you're able to feel a no blame, no shame, including no accusations, no targeting. And that's a difficult place to get to for some, because they've been through an awful lot. But actually working towards some level of acceptance is like the first station to try and get to.
Accepting that the past has been horrible. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Accepting that where they are now, there's a possibility of change if they wish.
Yeah. Yeah.
and there is a place of support, but they have to do the work, right? I'm asking because this is a massive subject for me, especially with my own family and things like that. Because even though when we do the work ourselves, we have very close family members around us that are, well, I'm not like, it's a tricky situation, Alan. So I'm completely versed in that, and that's why I really wanted to get into that. So what are the steps that people take?
Well, instead of a step, sometimes it's a case of knowing that there's the emotional element to what you've just described, and I'm describing as well, and recognizing that even when we got to your first question, actually recognizing they could choose change as a possibility, they will maybe emotionally react, oh no, I've tried that before, that's not possible, I'm stuck with this is me, this is the way I feel, this is the way I think, this is who I am. If you don't accept that, Alan, then you're not dealing with me, you're not hearing me. Does that make sense? So
Alan, Alan, you've got you've just chills at the back of my neck. So, at what point does the father figure play in that? Do you have to step away because they're not willing to? What is it that people in those situations can do? Because I know people are dealing with things.
Yeah,
I know it's hard. And so, Alan, what part does the parental in that connection between the father and son? What position do you play? Is it giving them the space to carry on with those attributes, or stepping away and thinking you have to go on this journey on your own?
I have to recognize that the person I'm with in the room, or maybe online on video call, is somebody who's potentially going to experience the strength of that memory, as you've said, potentially in sensory systems that I'm not aware of them being in touch with, that bring those memories vividly back again, and the sense of the limitations, the sense of their helplessness. So I'm aware that I need to be in touch with not just that, and recognize that and help to calm that down in the way that you're mentioning victim, but you and Rachel were also mentioning things about being able to calm and self-soothe and self-reassure, which is the kind of the thin end of dealing with kind of emotional overwhelm. So we need to address that element. But then what we need to engage is that they, in their own minds, have brought themselves to have this conversation, and there is a sense of somebody wants change to happen. Some aspect of them is hopeful that change can happen. That's why we're having the conversation. So I'm trying to have the conversation separately, but with both aspects of themselves, including the more grown up, the more mature, the more confident, the more hope-filled aspect of them, which can then understand some concepts. And one of the useful concepts, you're already mentioning the parent idea, and I may be labouring this a little bit much, but the concept that they may need is the Cartman drama triangle of the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. So if we've been,
I love this. Love this.
So if you've been in the victim position, you feel somewhere that some agency, some force, some person put you into this position somehow. So, of course, when we're trying to track what we might call responsibility, there may be strong elements from our feelings that are wanting to place blame because the experience has been so difficult to go through and to live with afterwards. So we need to find out whether it's possible to pull back a little bit from the intensity of the blaming and to try and understand how somebody was in a position with us that meant the wrong things were done, things that were not helpful, or they were intrusive, or we were let down. So that would be, they need to offer some kind of acceptance of the place of the perpetrator as they might see them, and recognize this person had faults or failings or shortcomings, but maybe did not think through and maybe did not intend everything that they were eventually to be part of co-creating.
Yeah.
I need to avoid becoming the rescuer or the attempted rescuer. And they need to help themselves to become part of the hopeful element themselves, being in the partial rescuer position. Sorry, does that make sense?
That does make sense. So, I get the rescuer position. I've certainly played the rescuer position. Absolutely. And that's why I think this is a great subject, Alan. great subject. How can you recognize you're in a rescuer mindset?
Well, as I've said, it's very valuable and very useful, and as long as it's resourced and not stuck in an attitude of blaming or criticism or negativity, it's the hopeful side and the helpful side which will draw you towards finding the energy and finding the connection with inner resources, but also outer resources and people and relationships and ways of thinking together, which will help to shift the burden.
Wow. Wow, Allan. I love that. How long have you been doing this, Allan? Because you've been working. Where is it you work? I know you work for a government-sponsored situation, right?
I've been working in the NHS and local authorities.
Yep.
I've been working with children, young people in care, those in substitute care situations. But I've been working in mental health for nearly career length involvement in emotional and psychological well-being. So these kind of concepts are useful if you're a practitioner, but they're useful also if you're a carer or somebody trying to support people, or maybe even they're useful sometimes for those in pastoral care situations in education as well.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening who's been in care situations and is still struggling with certain things, what would you say on a radio station to him, Allan?
Let me clarify, and let's check we're being specific. So I'm not going to tell people what to do.
No, not in any way whatsoever. No, I think you made a clear distinction there. Very good, Allan. If somebody was listening that said, I've been in the care home and I'm still struggling with something, what would be a good 3-step process for them to start doing, to start realizing and to start moving forward?
If we're talking about young people who've been in substitute family care and missed out on family in many ways, then there are agencies, and a lot of them were developed over the past sort of 20, 25 years, something like that, with young people who said, we need better than this for those of us who understand each other far better. I'm not actually in touch with the kind of agencies they would need, but they will be able to Google search for young people's help. But they could also be in touch with NSPCC, Bernardo's, Young Minds, or others who will signpost them to, or another good source of support online for mental health issues is the Anna Freud Centre on My Mind as a resource website. But they would be able to find the kind of people they would need to be in touch with, who would help them with understanding specifically their kind of experiences. And that's one of the things they need to check out if they're going to try and find a counsellor or a coach or a therapist. They probably need to find somebody who's versed in these kinds of things if they've moved on from, and they're now independent adults looking for support.
Absolutely. So I know you've been in counselling for quite a while, being a counsellor. What is it that fascinated you about going into coaching and NLP and going down that route? What was the reason that fascinated you there, Allan? Have you got any experiences from the past that you were like, this is where I need to move forward to?
Yes, absolutely. Do you know what? There was some well, I guess the situation arose for me in terms of the model I'm thinking about, which was that in my early days in welfare and social care, I had the good fortune to work in a secure unit for young people who needed to be contained because their lives were in such turmoil that they may or may not have survived if they were outside, and they were under court orders to be in there for a period of time. It was run as a therapeutic community. Now, one of the aspects of therapeutic communities, as they found out, is that the more responsibility, the more creativity, the more imagination and opportunities to express themselves you give people who are otherwise seem to be so burdened by life, the more they grow. Well, what a surprise to all of us. Not really, is it? But what I'm saying is the containment and the restriction on their lives was basically a cycle repeating itself. Yeah. So in working in mental health and working in counselling, the more I could engage a young person in making choices and setting themselves up tasks to do to achieve, And they came back saying, I had a go at it, didn't work out too well, but we talked about it. They felt bad about it, first of all. They'd have another go or pick something different or find the skills they really wanted to work with. Actually, they made so much faster progress in the counselling as well. So it seemed to me as though I was being moved by my clients, by being educated by them and informed by them to go, this counselling is okay. It does a certain amount, Alan, but actually what we need is a bit of a mixture that's about out there and not just back then and not just in here with you, but out there now and in future days and in the week coming or the 2 weeks coming before I see you again. I need some help to do the things that are going to make me feel so much better about my life. And that was the model of coaching. I thought, that's what I'm trying to do. So I need to learn it properly.
Perfect. Fantastic. Good stuff. Alan, is there anything? Because I knew the time would fly by, Alan. You've done 25 minutes, and I know. I told you 15 minutes because I didn't want anyone freaking out, but I knew I was going to have you on for longer. I just thought, you know what? I'll tell them it's 10 minutes and just keep asking questions.
I have no sense of that time going by.
Because you're having fun. You're having fun, Alan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for anyone that's listening right now, what would be something that you would say? Look, try this. If you don't think it works, try it again. That's the kind of scenario that we have.
Okay. So what comes to mind is two things.
Mm-hmm.
So one is a bit like Rachel picked up on. What are the small things that people can do and become aware of and actually try for themselves? And I found that just inviting people to concentrate on their breathing for 2 minutes or 3 minutes at some time of the day, when you are not under pressure, you're not putting off chores, there's not somebody demanding your attention. If you can turn off the social media temporarily, it might be that it's choose to do it at a restful time, as in preparation for sleep, because it might help you with preparation for that in any case. And lots of people with stresses in lives, as we know, find it very difficult to do the preparation and get themselves off to sleep in a reasonable kind of way. But what I was going to say was just do the concentrating on your breathing and just notice that you're breathing in and you're breathing out. And if this is a problem with how many busy, fast, demanding thoughts you've got in your head, shooting off in all different directions, reminding you of the stuff you haven't done, the stuff that didn't work out, stuff you've got to do tomorrow, all that kind of stuff. If that's going on and what you need is words, then say to yourself, I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. And just say that repeatedly. It's going to sound very strange if you've got a partner and you're lying there and you're just saying this. And this is just going to be really weird. But I'm not. But I'm saying if you can say it to yourself silently, even if you just say it silently. The other thing I was going to say, which I won't develop any further, but I did mention it to you, I've called self-harmonization on the basis that lots of people know in the zone or in the flow or contentment or leisure or peacefulness. When they happen, they know them. What I'm saying is, if you've got an absence of those things for a long period of time, and I would say an absence of self-harmonization, which might mean body and mind and emotion and actions and choices, there's something out of kilter somewhere, then it may be that you need to do a stock take. Yeah, you need to do a check. And some people in coaching call this like a kind of circle of life. You look around at all the aspects of yourself and go, tick, cross on that one. I'm not doing very well on that. Give that a score. Yeah. And they come up with a measure of whether things are going well or not going well. What I'm saying about the self-harmonization is, you know, when it's there, you wouldn't even use the term, but you wouldn't even talk contentment or peacefulness or whatever, because it's just fine. Life is going absolutely fine. If there's an absence of it for a long period of time, that may come the time to do the stock check that goes, is it rational things that I can turn into a task, get this sorted, or schedule it and get it done, and then it'll be off my mind, it won't be bothering me. If you've done all of that stuff and you're still unsettled, there's still something out of kilter, off balance about what's going on in your life, that would be the time to seek out a helping, trained, professional listener, guide, coach, counselor, therapist. So that's my suggestion.
Perfect. Alan, quickly, how can I get in contact? How can anybody get in contact with you, Alan?
So my website, ARG, my initials, Coach Counselor, all joined up, argcoachcounselor.com.
Simple.
Lovely.
Love it. Alan, I love that conversation. Thank you very much for sharing.
It's been an absolute pleasure to be a guest with you, Cuddy. I enjoyed it so much. The time flew by. if there's anything that you think I could be useful to talk about, again, I would love to come back.
Alan, I have a feeling you might be a little bit of a regular on here because that was a very good chat. Thank you so much. Stay there,
Thanks so
Alan.
much.
Stay there. Stay there. Stay there. We're going to say goodbye together. We've got 30 seconds left. Right. So quickly, for anyone that's listening, David, Veronica, anyone skulking in the background, at 7 o'clock tonight, I am doing a free seminar on how to change your thoughts, change your life. And it's going to be talking about identity. And it's going to be talking about what we touched on and how we can change those identities, become who we want to be instead of who we think we are. That's live in the Facebook group at 7 p.m. Get over to the Facebook group, Monkey Mind Relaxation, and I'll see you there. It's a goodbye from Cody, and it's a goodbye from Alan.